Hey, welcome back to Sam Who Can't or Can. I just added the who because I'm awesome. Alright, so getting into the nitty gritty of fairy houses. There are two types of fairy houses that we're going to talk about. Now, fairy houses are only limited by your imagination. Like, you can do anything with these things. Make them as artistic or as rustic as you want. But there are two big differences between fairy housing groups. You have indoor or outdoor, is what this basically boils down to. So you have the indoor fairy house, which can be made out of anything. You can put styrofoam, you can use a chip jar, you can use a planter if you want. You can make a fairy house out of this. You can carve it, add stuff, and build up whatever you want. The big difference between indoor and outdoor fairy houses is outdoor fairy houses have a tendency to be biodegradable. Biodegradable, because I can speak words. So as you can see, this planter is plastic. Plastic doesn't degrade well, as most people know. So the internal fairy houses, especially if you want something to last a little bit longer, you can go into your plastics, your cardboards and things like that. You can use foam. You can use florist foam, which is this green compacted foam that you can put inside of things and stick stuff in. All of the indoor fairy houses, Indoor fairy houses are awesome because you can do them with kids as a small, quick craft day, and they don't have to be extreme or extravagant. You can use an empty soda bottle, carve a couple of things in it, glue some stuff on it, and call it a fairy house. Make it look like a mushroom. Really artistic people, like I've seen somebody take a chip can, a cardboard box, and make it into like a 3-story fairy house with a tower. Elijah? No. Back up. So the inside fairy houses, you aren't limited by anything or how you put it together. You can make it however welded you want or whatever you want to do. Outdoor fairy houses, I like to make biodegradable, which means I'm using things like mosses, and this right here is actually decorative willow tree stuff, branches, because that would be the word I was looking for. These are actual tree branches. This is real wood. This is something that they sell for decoration in any store that you go to, be it your local massive chain retailer or if you go to like a hobby store. You can find real wood there. We actually got this. I'm going to recycle this into a fairy house, and this is going to be the base of my fairy house. We got this because we were doing a film and we needed something that looked like roots, which willow wood is really good for looking like roots. Willow wood is also pretty strong. I mean, I can bust this myself if I want to. I can yank it over my knee and bust it, but I'm actually going to be a little bit more creative in how I do the cuts on it. One of the things that I really like about willow is that it's really bendy, flexible, and it's got a lot of natural forms to it. I'm going to be using these as either the support structure or the whole entire inside-outside branches that I use for the fairy house. I usually will go out and pick up deadfall. Deadfall is tree limbs and branches that fall during storms or during windy days. I try to find a big, thick branch for my bottom or my base of my house, and then I build up from there. You can also find barks and stuff. We're actually going to go outside, not today, on a different video. We're going to go outside and we're going to start picking up some more stuff that I need for this fairy house. We're going to be picking up tree barks, tree branches, sticks, twigs. I'm going to be picking up nuts and stuff that have fallen. Acorns are huge because the acorns are really cutesy, and you can make them into like dinnerware and stuff like that. Walnut shells work really good for baskets and things like that. So we're going to be picking up a lot of deadfall stuff that isn't too rotted out, that would be good enough to hold up to being a fairy house. I use a lot of mosses and stuff to hide my seams when I'm doing it. The only thing that I use in an external fairy house, depending on how much time I have and who I'm doing it for, the only thing I use that's not biodegradable is hot glue. And I usually use hot glue because when I give it to the people, if they need to do a quick fix, it is easier for them to just pull out a hot glue gun and smack it back together. And hot glue is pretty durable, especially if you get the Gorilla Glue and you treat everything. because there's a spray that you can use that'll extend the life. Now the sprays also aren't going to be necessarily harmful for the environment if you pick out the right ones, which we'll cover those later. But hot glue is the only thing that I use that's not biodegradable, and I don't really have too much of a choice in that if I'm giving the fairy house as a gift, because a lot of the other ways that I do things with wood glues and with embroidery floss, which we'll break down, is not something that your average person's gonna know how to real quick tie this back on, slap some wood glue on it, and this is how you brace it to dry. Or how you actually mix your own little kind of plaster out of natural materials to weld stuff together. Because I do this plaster stuff that's literally just baking soda, cornstarch, and water, or another ingredient if I have it, and then I'll put it on there as kind of like this mock plaster, and if it rains, it'll dissolve. Which is not any of my long-lasting fairy houses, but it all depends on what you treat it with. But I will be using hot glue on this one. Some more stuff that goes into fairy houses, another big thing, and you can do this inside or outside. I would not recommend this on an inside fairy house though. This is actually Spanish moss, and it's dried out, which is a good thing. It's been a while since I've made a fairy house, but I also like dried out mosses. Now, the cool thing about Spanish moss is how it looks, and it's also going to have twigs and stuff in there. But the bad thing about Spanish moss is that it's literally just these mossy tendrils, and unless you glue each individual tendril down, you're going to have fall, or what I like to call shedding. So you're going to lose some of your moss and stuff, and you really don't want that all over your house. Trust me, the last fairy house I made was a two-story hinged door that opened that was like an interactive play fairy house, and by the time I got it done and I thought I had gotten all the moss shaken off, I got a phone call from the mom demanding to know why the fuck there was moss all over her house. Another thing that I will use in interior, exterior fairy houses, indoor, outdoor, inside, outside. This right here is basically just burlap ribbon. And the only thing in here that's really not biodegradable is the wires. Everything else in the burlap will degrade with time, and the wires will eventually rust and flake off. I try to leave as a minimal not breakdowns as possible. So I will use some wiring in fairy houses. I will use some hot glue. If I know where the fairy house is that I put it, because one time I did like 7 fairy houses for a fence row at an apartment complex I was living at. I checked on them, and I still go back and check on them, and if any of them have fallen apart, I will actually pick up the hot glue that was left over. Spanish moss is one of my favorites for look. Another moss that's a really good one is green moss, and this stuff you can literally pick up in your hobby store, but once again, a lot of this looks powdered, and it's got twigs and stuff in there. This stuff, there's different mosses, there's a whole bunch of different mosses you can use. But you're always going to have to watch out for shedding on mosses. Another huge thing is pine cones. You can make little hats out of pine cones, or you can actually take these and break these down and make these into roof shingles or siding shingles on a house, depending on how detailed you'd want to get. One of the things that I used to do is I actually used to break off this bottom part from the rest of it, and then I would try to peel back some of this and make this into like a hat or something for the fairies. This is another moss that I use. This one is actually my preferred one for indoor mosses, because this one is more of a tighter bound moss and is less likely to shed on you. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head though, so I will have to get the name for it and get it back to you. I know it's not Spanish moss, because Spanish moss is a big giant pain in the butt. It might be, but I doubt it. Anyway, this is the one that I will actually use for interior ones. Now, you can also, for interior fairy houses, you can use the decorative, anything that's decorative. This is basically just wire with greenery stuck to it that's plastic, and you can use that. I will not usually use these for the external ones because this is just too much plastic. But I will use it for internal ones. Something that I always use on any of my fairy houses is embroidery floss. Now, I covered this as a basic for any crafter. Embroidery floss is literally just a thicker thread that you can use for embroidery. You can break it down into more individual threads. I've actually used some embroidery floss as emergency sewing thread. But I usually use this as rope. This is my fairy rope. And the cool thing about embroidery floss is that it comes in a bunch of different colors. So you can always go wacky psychedelic fairies, or you can stay with the natural browns and creams, which is what I usually go for rope. Fairies and glitter kind of go hand in hand, and if I'm doing an external fairy house, I don't use glitter. Or if I use glitter, it is just for the parents to leave. Like the last one that I did a bunch of additional stuff for the house. Like I did a tub, a seashell tub, and some other stuff that were supposed to be added in increments like the fairy is moving in. And I gave her glitter packets to use, but I didn't use any more glitter on the house. I don't put glitter anywhere. Glitter is literally microscopic plastic. I know there are huge craft glitter fiends, especially on YouTube. But please, unless it is an internal fairy house, do not use glitter on external fairy houses. There is too much glitter in the world as it is, and I know I'm probably going to get yelled at for that. But please, please do not use glitter on external fairy houses. When you're doing it, try to keep the environment in mind. Fairies are natural creatures. Fairies are creatures of the forests and of the creeks and of the streams and of nature. And when you go to build one of these things for outside, they're not glitter. Glitter was a Disney additive. It was not anything in the original fairy stuff. Sunshine and rainbows maybe, but not glitter. So please, for the love of nature, leave the glitter inside. Stay your hand from the glitter container. I have this because I am forced to as a crafter, and friends of mine like glitter. I don't use this crap on a daily basis. I hate using this stuff for my crafts. I am as anti-glitter as Kesha is glitter all over the place. No glitter on outside fairy houses. If you want to glitter, use it on the inside fairy house on your plastic stuff and glitter the hell out of it. I don't care. But I don't want to see these going outside. Because you guys, I don't even know how many of you fully understand how plastics break down, but they don't. Plastics break down into microscopic particles that you can't see with the naked eye and wind up in fish in the ocean. And all you're doing is putting a pre-broke down piece of microscopic glitter out there, and it's just not worth it. So, like I said, those are the two different types of fairy houses. Please leave the glitter out of this. And we will get back to more later. We're actually going to do, the next one will be outside, and I will be in different clothes because it'll be a different day. And we'll start getting stuff to do this fairy house and get it made. And let's see what you guys think. So, if you guys have any questions about fairy houses or why I ban glitter, just let me know in the comments down below. I try to be on YouTube more frequently now that I'm actually having my own channel. So I'm working on it. But if I don't get back to you for a day or two, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just remember, no glitter. Glitter is not always needed for whimsy. Bye. No glitter. No glitter. Peace.